everybody. I'm very thrilled to see so many of you here. Not everybody is lying with a hangover from last night's after party and pub crawl and whatever. So we are here to talk about the myth of gender diversity at tech. My name is Marie Valentin Beck. I am a sociologist and innovator working with diversity and media strategy. And I want to introduce this amazing panel to you. First, we have Matias Pollmann-Larsen. He is principal at Boston Consulting Group. He is also the co-author of an analysis called Wake Up Denmark, and also the co-author of a very recently published book called Dronningens nye klæder, which means the Queen's new clothes, which is an ironic version of the Emperor's new clothes. And next we have Helene Aagaard. Helene Aagaard is the co-founder of GoGetty, and GoGetty is an employer branding, career and diversity platform. GoGetty makes diversity and inclusion measurable and transparent. Next to Helene, we have Sherry List. Sherry List is relation developer at Microsoft, and she's also the vice chairman of the board at Hack Your Future, which is a coding school for refugees and asylum seekers and other marginalized groups. So that is very cool. And finally, we have Camilla Ley Valentin. She is the co-founder of the internet queuing system Queuit, now functioning as the CCO. And she was also named the Danish Female Entrepreneur of the Year in 2012. So, first myth that we will uncover is the myth that the tech industry does not have a diversity problem. Because, as we are probably all aware, the tech industry does have a diversity problem. Not near enough women nor minorities are joining the tech industry. So, can you, each of you, give me one, maybe two, sentences of why is this a problem? You want to go ahead, Matias?
I can go ahead. We take the issue of diversity not from an ethical or from a human rights point of view of equal representation society, but merely from a value creation potential. Diversity is proven, it's like climate change, everybody has proven it, but the public has taken years to understand it. But diversity is valuable, and companies and organizations that have a diverse management team, diverse employees, teams, they actually perform better when merged with inclusion. So diversity is not just a buzzword, it's actually a business and a value generation imperative in the tech world as anywhere else.
That was more than one or two sentences, but very good.
Sorry.
Thank you. Helene?
I think all industries and businesses have issues with diversity. It's not only the tech industry as such, but agreeing with Matias that this is a value driver. But if you imagine that 50% of your target groups are female and you don't design and produce for that target group when creating your products, how will you then be able to commercially sell them in the market if you don't understand your target group? So that's one thing about diversity in the tech. What is really, 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 really scary sometimes when it comes to diversity in tech is that some of the design flaws in the tech industries have seriously complications for females if they're not handled correctly. So the products gets better, the working environment gets better, the business sides gets better. And then, of course, there is that whole representation matters, and companies have a responsibility in the society that we live in.
Thank you. Sherry?
And I totally agree with both of you. You mostly cover everything. But from my point of view is also that the value that the diversity bring to your company is that each of us, I mean, one is the gender diversity, but the other thing is that anyway, that each of us coming from different backgrounds with the different stories, and then when we all sit together and brainstorm, and then try to see that how we can improve a product, that's a place that your product can get mature as well. So we generally don't want to go in a place that like an echo room, that when I say something and everybody is agree with me, so your idea never get mature. So you want to have people that they look at it from the different angle. And of course, one of the biggest challenges that gender diversity is one of the first one, that of course that we can all look at it from the different angle and then make it more mature.
Thank you.
Have an inclusive product at the end.
Thank you.
I think it's going to be more of an addition to what was already said. So we have to keep in mind that besides all the bias that can happen within the products that we develop, if we don't have a diverse set of people working on it, there are also products that just don't get invented and don't get built that are maybe more specifically for a minority. For example, females is of course the overwhelming example, but it could be other factors. So I just wanted to add that.
All right, so it's a matter of quality, and it's a matter of producing the products that there are actually a need for. Before we move on, I want to encourage everybody to join the conversation at Slido. You go to slido.com and you #TechBBQ is the code, and we will have time for a few questions at the end of the session. So please join us on Slido. Moving on from why to how. So let's reveal that it is indeed a myth that diversity is the same as inclusion. Diversity and inclusion is, in fact, two different things. I read it explained like diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. But what does this mean more concretely for startups and the tech business in general? What does this invitation consist of, and what is the dance? Helene, would you care to elaborate?
Yeah, but I think there is this big confusion right now, is that if you just hire a lot of women and you hire a lot of brown people and yellow people, and you also throw in a couple of different sexualities that are not heterosexual, then you have a diverse team. Yeah, sure you do, but it's not about recruiting that just more women and more gays. It's about creating an inclusive culture that actually allows for that same promotion that white heterosexual males have, that same promotion pipeline and so forth. And what you do about that is you start off with saying, okay, first of all, we have a diversity policy. So we have ground rules on how we do our hiring or our recruiting. We have ground rules on how we do our promotions. We have ground rules on how we handle our paternity leaves and maternity leaves. We have ground rules, etc., etc., etc. So if you start by pulling in that kind of policy, and then have leadership buy-in that this is something we want to work with throughout the organization. Inclusive cultures comes from everybody being heard and feeling safe over the same amount of time. And that is very, very different from just being diversity.
So, but does this mean this is only an HR thing?
No, diversity and inclusion then becomes a strategic point that you have to deal with throughout the entire organization, whether it's commercial, it's HR, it's the operation side of it. It's the same, like you have to deal with safety and security throughout the entire organization, then you also have to deal with diversity and inclusion throughout the entire organization. I think many people right now see it as something, okay, HR has to deal with this. Mm-hmm. This is something that human remains then must handle. And that is not really what it is about. This is should be, in order for it to work, a strategic effort from the entire organization with buy-in from leadership. Whether you then anchor it with the CEO or COO and so forth, that's up to the organization as such, but it's something that should be all the way through.
Well, yeah, please.
I'm not sure I'm fully with that explanation. For me, diversity, in the sense of how we look, and female and male, has nothing to do with the diversity that is valuable to business or sexuality. What is valuable is having a diverse set of competencies and a diverse set of personalities and ways of thinking. That brings value. Now, we take gender as one of the proxies that actually, you know, a female and a male actually think quite different, so they actually provide that diversity. But it's not for the sake of the women or the male. It's for the sake of having that diversity of mindset and profiles and competencies to actually be diverse, with inclusion being the way of making decisions. So what I'm saying is you can have 60 years old white men around the table and be a very diverse group, as well as having very different female and male and gay and lesbian and the whole spectrum, and brown and white, and everybody studied in Harvard, everybody studied the same, and they could actually be very undiverse group.
But in order for this group of white 60-year-old men you just mentioned, for them to be diverse, that would mean that they would have to have different backgrounds,
yes,
different educations, maybe different income levels, and on very
because
tell me on what
those
parameters would you want the diversity then?
Those elements that you're mentioning is some leading indicator of how we think differently. So a rich person would think differently than a poor person, but the value is about how you think differently. Whether you're rich or poor, or white or black, or women or men, it doesn't really matter. But those are leading indicators. So you have gender, you have age, and you have nationality or background being the three most important leading indicators for diversity. But it's not enough to have diversity around those three to have real diversity. It's a good indicator.
So knowledge diversity.
No. So the point is, if you hire women and male in equal in a very diverse group or ethnicity, you actually will have probably a very good diversity overall, because those are leading indicators. But it's not for their sake, but it's for the sake of having a diverse and inclusive decision-making process in your team.
Sherry?
Yeah, what I wanted to add is that when we have a group of people that they come from as you mentioned, that from different backgrounds with the different stories, and then we will kind of that end up eventually. I mean, that's a very good starting point as well. And then because these people, especially when you have a startup, there are a couple of good friends that you start something together. You think the same, you're coming from the same background. That's why that you were friends from the beginning. And then all of your decision, everything will go in one direction. And then you come to a point that you say that, I want to have more women in my company. But then you hire these women, and then you never thought about it, that what are the needs that they have. For example, I have a friend that in Spain that she is working with actually coaching the startups to make it more inclusive. And she hears a lot of crazy stories that, for example, the woman who just got back from the maternity leave and needs to have a decaf coffee. And people are making laugh, and why you want to have all of these extra things, because those guys, they never thought about it. And that's one of the things. But the other thing is that maybe that those people that they come to the company, that they need totally different need. And then when everybody thinks the same, it doesn't matter. As you mentioned, I agree that you can be that from 50-50 totally. But that 50-50, if they exactly think the same, like that me, I don't have child, it also doesn't care about when I run a conference, and the first time people, they ask me that, do you have a childcare? So that, no, why? And because I don't have it, so it doesn't mean that I'm a mean person. It just never came in my mind. So we need to have, whenever that we have a company, we have a conference, we need to have a board, that decision board. This should be reflection of the society, which is way more than gendered, but it's more than we need from totally different aspects and the backgrounds.
Thank you. Helene, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I totally agree in the diversity of thought, and that you need some different backgrounds and different educations and so forth. But for example, when Apple came out with their healthcare app, the first where you can track your body movements and so forth, you couldn't track your period. 50% were cut off because the app was designed by men. So even though you may say that you can have a group of people and they're all white men, but they have different backgrounds and come from different schools and so forth, that there is diversity there. Matias, I just wanted to make sure that was what you said. You still don't get the true diversity of that, because you need to be able to have somebody at the table or in your product development who has walked those shoes for that product or that target group that you're designing for. And if you don't have somebody sitting in that product team developing for women or are female, then you will not be able to see those biases or non-biases that goes within that product.
I think the opportunity that many companies are leaving behind, not only for women, but also for developing countries and whole populations that are actually poor and bringing up, is huge. I don't dispute that. I think it's very narrow, relevant, but narrow to product development, what you are saying, and it's very valuable. It's true. And as much as architects and disabled people, that they don't put a wheelchair, ramp or whatever, but that's product development. And here, the value of diversity is for decision making, and that's way broader than just product development. Without taking any value out of actually designing for a group, women, disabled, poor, rich, or whatever that is. So I completely agree with you, but I think it's broader.
So, in my perspective, a way to understand this is that being a minority, being a woman, being a man, being disabled, having a minority sexuality, or whatever the parameter you're looking at, will give you certain experiences. So you enter a room with different experiences. Does that cover what we're talking about?
Yeah, so the point is, the focus group that Apple employed to test the app, if they were diverse, representing different user groups, women and men, regardless of whether you have, men, women, or whatever in the product development, they would have gotten that the period is not tracked. It's not intrinsic in the product developer group. It's on the process that you go through and what do you hear or you don't hear. So.
Then it also comes back to, you don't only need diversity in terms of gender, ethnicity, whatever it could be in the product development, but you also need it in decision making.
Everywhere, yes.
So you need it everywhere.
Absolutely.
And let me move on.
And let me just say that women are not a minority.
No. Did I say that?
Yeah.
Women are not a minority. Not on this stage. Anyway. So, well, the decision-making process. Today, it is hard to find someone that doesn't support diversity, in theory, anyway. So putting that theoretical support into action is still rare, actually. Arguments such as there just aren't enough people to pick and choose from, or it will make us it will make us compromise on talent, are often heard. What do you say to these often rather powerful decision makers? Are they clinging on to a myth? Do you have to compromise on talent if you want to work with diversity? Camilla?
I don't think anybody in business ever compromises on talent. I think that's a very strange statement to make, to be honest. It's about being conscious about seeking out the talent that falls into these other groups that are maybe underrepresented in your company. It's about the effort, it's about seeking new ways, and it's not easy, but you can also do other things. I think if you have trouble, like we all do, finding female developers, for example, that's super tough. Then try to find as many females as possible in the teams that surround the developers, because that will make it easier. Once that one female coder shows up, she'll feel more part of the group. If you have maybe people in onboarding that are females, or maybe people in sales that they work with on some projects or whatever, maybe just someone that sits near them in the office space. And then when you try to recruit that first female, then show her around in the office or have her work there for a day, see that the male developers are actually nice and they want this in the team. If they do, if they don't, then that's another action. But try to sort of work with it in other ways, and you can do a lot by being conscious. And I don't think anybody is saying it's easy, especially in certain parts of a technology company. But it's something to be aware of. And
yeah, Helene.
Sorry.
And I also think we're asking the wrong question sometimes when we talk about talent, because we're asking who's the best person for the job. And yeah, that's true, but when we look at how you manage teams today and what effective leadership actually is, you should be asking who's the best person for the team. And those two are not necessarily the same, because you can have a team consisting of purely white men between the ages of 35 to 40, all educated at Copenhagen Business School, 10 years of management consulting, and the best person for that team is not another white man between the ages of 35 and 40, educated at CBS. So it's also a question of how you recruit. But I totally agree with Camilla that there's not a business out there that would ever compromise talent for diversity.
No, but it can't be the explanation for not diving into the diversity work that you would have, or maybe a fear. Maybe it's a fear that small businesses, in particular, would have, that they would have to compromise on these things. Yeah, Sherry.
I would say that I do agree that we have a little bit of problem with the talent pool, especially as my experience in Denmark. That first of all, it is difficult to find developers. I was developer for my whole life, so that was for me. My understanding was when I came to Denmark, and I work at the companies that I found that most of the developers, they are not Danish, and then in addition to that, it is not easy to find the female developers. I totally agree with that, and that's the problem that I know that there are a lot of groups that they are working right now to fix the talent pool. But I do agree that there are a lot of the problem is that people also, that when they put the job ads, they put the whole things that there are a lot of, you need to be 10 years in this, you need to 20 years, even for the technology that doesn't exist.
Oh,
that I saw all of these things. For example, I remember that I was looking for a job as an Angular developer, and then they would just say that 7 years of experience with Angular, which even is not.
How old
there.
is Angular?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first Angular JS was released in 2012.
Yeah, okay.
And
so 7 years of experience.
And it was a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't exist.
Right.
So they put a lot of these things because, of course, there are a lot of problems with the communication between HR and also the technical team. So it brings up that a lot of wrong ads. And then, as a result of that, I do agree that as one thing that the problem that I think that the females they have, that we are perfectionists. That I do, and I try to see that I should be the best. I should at least have 10 of these 12 things in order to apply for the job. So all of these not right job advertisement discouraging a lot of females to apply for that. And then whereas the guys, in my opinion, I might be wrong, that they would just say that I'm good in it. I will go and apply for it.
Yes.
And then they will get the job.
Yes, they
so
will.
I was hiring people, and I just said that there was 10 guys come, maybe one woman come, and then that woman, it was the best among the rest, but was not good in selling herself. I mean, not selling is a wrong word, but it was just not confident enough. I do it as well unconsciously when I go
Yes.
to the job interview as well. So to me, that in order to fix this talent pool is that to be a little bit more conscious
Yes.
about this, all of this process. And then when you are interviewing people, it shouldn't be one person interviewing, because it should be also a group of people that they see, and then they can understand this. So if I'm there,
A group
I
of
can be
diverse
there.
people, I assume.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. I think you bring up a very important point here, being that this is a mindset that we all hold, regardless of gender or ethnicity. Both men and women favor men,
Yes.
and that is something that goes on a subconscious
Yes.
level. So being conscious of that would be a first step. We are almost out of time, but we are going to have one or two questions from Slido. Thank you for these. I am going to go with, how do we engage more men to be active in this topic? A very relevant question to this panel consisting of 4 women and 1 man. Matthias, do you want to have a go? Or, I mean, you wrote a book about this.
I think I would like to address actually this and hopefully also touch upon other questions, because I think they are extremely relevant, and thank you for those as well. The problem is not the leaders. I launched with the UN Women Gender Diversity Roundtable in Denmark. And that's basically the presidents of the biggest universities, of the biggest, the CEOs of the biggest companies, and DI and civil society organization. Leaders engage. The point is that they see the value of diversity, regardless of the discussion about gender and the value of diversity. Hence, leaders they have a pyramid, they have an organization, and when they understand that diversity is important and is relevant for their business or the organization, then they act on it. The problem that we have, especially in Denmark, is that people, society, don't have that understanding. When we hear that Mette is taking 6 months maternity leave, and when we hear that Patrick is taking 6 months paternity leave, unconsciously or consciously, and I think the same, I think, Mette, you are a horrible mother, and Patrick, you are in for a treat. And we all think like this. But 90%...
In for a treat, the real way or the ironic way?
You're in for a treat because you're going to take 6 months paternity leave as a father.
It's hard.
That's weird.
Oh.
But that's weird. And when 90% of the leave is taken by the mother, we have a problem in Denmark. And we need to understand, we need to wake up to this. Because, going to another question, when we have 8 male candidates and 2 female candidates applying for a job or a level in an organization, why would we expect more than 20% representation of women in that level? It's not the problem of the process, it's the problem about the pipeline. It's about the fact that 30% of women study at DTU, CBS, studies that goes up. And the same in the other way. We have in arts and health, etc., we have overrepresentation of women. And we have the same problem over there. So it's about how do we ensure diversity from education up through the ranks, and we create that flexibility and that environment for people to strive regardless of choices that are really embedded in our culture in Denmark.
Helene?
I actually have a lot of faith in the generation coming after me, because I was one of the horrible mothers who only took 6 months maternity leave, and my husband was one of those really, really modern, strange men who took 6 months of paternity leave. But I was talking to a couple of consultants from Netlight consultancy the other day, or not the other day, but in spring, and they are kind of talents that every company wants to have, and they're under 30, they have a master's degree from Copenhagen Business School, they're digital raised and digital born, and I asked them why do they work for Netlight, and they said they wanted to be management consultancy, but they didn't want to work for McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group because that was too big, they wanted to do it with Netlight, that was digital, And I was kind of content with that response, and then they say, no, there's something else. Netlight is the only management consulting firm we know that has a gender equality policy and diversity policy, which for us means that when we are ready to become fathers, we can go on 6 months paternity leave. That was their reasons as talents to choose that company. And I know it's not for our generation, but the generation coming after us, this what we call sets, or C's, what sets?
C, yeah.
C, yeah.
Generation C.
They are demanding this. They are demanding diversity and inclusion, and they are demanding more equal rights both for themselves as fathers or as mothers, but also for their colleagues as such. So this is something that businesses and leaders must engage in. This is not it is a problem for society, but this is also a problem for companies. Talents are the most scarce resource out there, and you won't be able to hire any of them if you don't do anything regards to diversity and inclusion.
Thank you, Helene. So the generation to come do have other demands and other expectations, and young fathers will change a lot.
Changes are demand-driven.
That will be the closing comment, because we are out of time. So I want to thank Camilla and Sherry, Helene and Matias for joining me, and thank you all for joining this talk on the myth of gender diversity in tech. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.